I can do it just in case there's any other tech issues, but there's no one else joining.
Okay.
Are we have enough? Who are we not? I'm not seeing everybody, but.
Rich is not here. Herman let us know that he had a last minute obligation, but he's going to try and check in later.
Okay. Okay.
All right, so welcome committee members, liaisons, and members of the public to the Bank Grants Committee meeting. Thank you for joining us. We're using Zoom with the goal to foster a more inclusive environment and effective meeting. If you would like to comment during the meeting, please type "I have a comment" or "I have a question" in the chat box, and the message will be sent to the host. Alternatively, you can also use the raise hand feature. In efforts of transparency for all those joining this public meeting, whether by Zoom or by phone, we request that you refrain from having side conversations on chat about the content of the meeting. Again, the chat feature is utilized simply as a tool for you to virtually indicate that you would like to speak in order to help the chair facilitate the discussion. As previously mentioned in the Legal Services Trust Fund Commission meetings, going forward, all Legal Services Trust Fund Commission meetings and committee meetings will be recorded and posted to the State Bar website. And just a friendly reminder that this is a video conference and to please be aware of your surroundings behind you. In the event that there's any background noise, the host will be temporarily muting you, but you will be able to unmute yourself. For those using Zoom on a computer, when on Zoom, hold down the space bar that will temporarily unmute you. And if you use your phone to dial into this meeting, please be sure your computer's microphone is on mute to avoid any audio feedback issues. And while joining audio via computer is highly recommended, if you lose audio, you can call in separately using the Zoom conference number. That's it.
Okay. The way this appears on my computer, I can't see everyone. There's a big State Bar letterhead. Can we get rid of that so we can all see each other a little better?
That's going to be the PowerPoint.
Okay, so we're doing that. Are we doing that first?
Oh, no, I can stop sharing.
Yeah, that'd be great. Okay, so are there any members of the public present who would like to comment before we move into the agenda? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on. We need to approve the action summary from the March.
Oh, Kim, we actually need to do roll call first.
Oh, roll call, sorry. Yeah.
All right. I'll do roll. Kim Savage.
Here.
Amin Al-Sarraf.
Here.
Herman DeBose. James Meeker.
Here.
Richard Reines. Selena Copeland. Sorry, I'm moving into liaisons. Bonnie Ho. Debbie Manning.
Here.
Chris Iglesias. And then State Bar staff. Dwan Nugent.
Here.
Christine Holmes here. Brady Dewar.
Here.
And Greg Shin.
Here.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes.
And let me just say at the outset that I'm hoping we can move through this meeting in 2 hours. I have an efficiency goal here for everybody. I think for staff and for people on the commission, we are just really meeting heavy right now this week and through at least the first week of August. So I'm hoping we can get through everything within 2 hours without giving anything short shrift, but just trying to be efficient and moving forward. So the first thing we need is an approval of the action summary for the March 13th, 2020 meeting. Hopefully you've had a chance to look at it. It's a really small committee presence today. Amin and James, have you had a chance to look at that? Jim?
Yes, I don't have any changes. I guess I could move to approve them.
Okay,
I second.
okay. We take a roll call vote on that?
Yes.
Okay,
Savage,
yes.
Alsaroff,
Yes.
DeBose, Meeker,
Yes.
and Rhinus. Okay. We have quorum, so it passes.
All right, so are we moving into the PowerPoint now?
Yes, we can do that. All right, let me share my screen. Okay, great. And everybody can see the PowerPoint?
Yes.
Yes.
Oops, there we go. Sorry. Okay. All right, so there was a memo attached with the meeting minutes, and the memo was for both items A and B. And as you note in the memo, they are kind of mixed a little bit together. So we're going to talk about both of these items in tandem. Okay, so let's start. So today we're going to go over 3 budget revisions and then a programs request to replace a partnering organization with a new organization for its 2020 bank grant. I'm going to provide all of the staff recommendations regarding these requests, and I think we'll be able to, unless you decide as we start moving through them, we can make a motion on all of them at once. But if it turns out that you'd like to do it separately, we can stop and do that as well. And then similar to the discussion and the motions the commission made at its last meeting regarding carryover and budget revision, staff is recommending similar motions for this committee to be flexible regarding these same requests for the bank grants, considering the COVID-19 pandemic and the significant impacts that the grantees on the grantees' ability to conduct their project activities and due to state and local shelter-in-place orders. And then all of the committee's recommendations will be taken to the full commission meeting for approval at its next meeting on August 14th. Okay, so we'll start with just a quick overview on budget revisions. So there are 3 main governing authorities for budget revisions. We have the bank grant agreement, the general grant provisions, and then also the functional matrix approved by the board of directors. And this provides the commission authority to approve requests over 25%. Grantees must use the grants in accordance with their approved budget. And then any material deviation, meaning a budget change of 10% or more, requires approval by the state bar. And they may revise their budgets throughout the grant period and do this for a variety of reasons, including unexpected costs, shifts in client need, or changes in staffs, just to name a few. Okay, so for the 2018 through 2020 bank grants that we're going to be talking about today, the approved budget consists of yearly grant budgets and the total project grant budget for the 3-year grant period. And these identify the funds and how they will be allocated by line items to the project. And then line items include personal costs, non-personnel costs, and subgrants. And grantees report project expenses in accordance with the approved yearly budget as part of their annual bank grant evaluations. And grantees also report on the status of their project, including successes, challenges, and lessons learned. Both fiscal and program staff review these annual evaluations to determine compliance with the grant agreement and other governing authorities, and if the project is on schedule to meet all of its stated goals and objectives. So we will be looking at the grant year 2019, and this evaluation was due on March 6th, and staff reviewed all the submitted evaluations and identified 7 grantees that had material deviations and needed to submit their budget. Okay, these first, staff approved the budget revisions for the grants whose deviations were between 10% and 25%. And these included Affordable Housing Advocates, Central California Legal Services, Family Violence Law Center, and Greater Bakersfield Legal Assistance. And as noted, as I will note in the staff recommendations for the 3 budget revisions that we are going to be reviewing for your approval, any unspent funds after the expiration of the grant period for these grants is going to be December 31st, 2020. They either need to return unspent funds to the State Bar or request a carryover for approval. And that's noted to these grantees. Okay. And these are the 3 grantees that we will be looking at in more depth for your review and approval, their budget revisions. And we'll start with, California Rural Legal Assistance, CRLA. So CRLA is systemic legal assistance to promote healthy community development and preserve affordable housing project. Builds on its rural foreclosure assistance by expanding services to address patterns of blight in communities in the Central Valley and Central Coast areas. So CRLA's approved budget for 2019 was $275,000. Their actual expenses as reported were $197,158, which is a deviation of 28.31. And there are 5 line items that account for most of this deviation. And this includes attorney expenses, employee benefits, office supply expenses, litigation expenses, and program travel expenses. So despite not spending down the entire budgeted amount for year 2, CRLA reported that it is on target to meet its project goals. And for example, through their evaluation, they noted for its foreclosure prevention work, clients were assisted in 128 cases, which exceeded their goal of 60 direct client services. And they continue to provide materials in Spanish and English regarding mortgage scams, second mortgage foreclosures, and modification process. It also continues to promote infrastructure improvements and to address and prevent blight. In its budget revision, CRLA added all unspent funds from 2019 to the same line items for 2020. And it also noted that they added an additional staff member in 2020 to focus on community redevelopment efforts in the Central Valley.
Hey, Christine, Kim has a question about when did CRLA's request to carry over come in?
Oh, their request came in, let me go back. They had an approved extension to submit their financials. So theirs is a little bit later.
But they missed the deadline, right? I guess just to clarify.
They did miss the deadline, but they did request an extension and it was granted.
Thank you. I was more concerned with the information they had at the, what the timing was on submitting it, how much information they had when they submitted this. Okay.
Oh.
Thank you. So we were already thick in the middle of
Yes.
the pandemic. Thank you.
Okay, so staff's recommendation is to approve CRLA's budget revision and allow them the opportunity to continue to spend down in 2020. And as noted earlier, any unspent funds at the end of the grant will be returned to the State Bar unless they request a carryover. We'll talk about this a little bit more, but I'll just mention it briefly now. CRLA, I don't believe is one of the grantees that have reached out already, but a number of grantees have reached out inquiring about carrying over just based on the inability to provide the level of services for the last couple of months. So we are anticipating that a number of grantees will request carryover. And I'll stop for just a second. Do we want to continue with the other two, or did we want to vote individually?
I'll just throw out the idea that we look at this with Impact Fund and the seniors program and vote on those at one time, but I would want to separate out, I'm suggesting we separate out one justice's proposal.
Okay.
So I think it's a bit of a, it's kind of, it's a different matter, different type of request. So that's my thought. I'd love to hear what Amin and Jim think on this.
Sounds good.
That was easy.
Yeah, that sounds good to me.
Okay.
All right, great. Okay, and then we'll move on to legal assistance for seniors. LAS was awarded a formula grant for its community education and outreach programs regarding legal rights of seniors in Alameda County. With this grant, they started a housing community education and policy development project to provide presentations to low-income seniors, informing them of their rights regarding housing stability. And LAS's approved budget for 2019 was $25,562, which included a small amount of unspent funds from year one of the project, and their actual expenses were $17,021, which was a deviation of 33.4%. And the line items that account for this deviation were all under personnel expenses, including paralegal, other staff, and employee benefits. Similarly, despite not spending down the entire budgeted amount, they reported that they are on schedule to meet their project goals and gave the example of two presentations that they have developed. One that is for both tenants and landlords, which discusses common issues such as rent increases, evictions, and security deposits. And then another presentation about aging in place and the risk and responsibilities in hiring in-home care to meet daily living needs. And they also noted, and I'm just going to mention that they submitted this on time, so this was submitted early March. They noted at that point that they had increased personnel expenses in those first 2 months of 2020, going towards future community education events and outreach. And then they're also working on a home ownership preservation presentation, which will address foreclosures, reverse mortgages, and home scams. So the recommendation is the same to approve this budget revision. Like CRLA, they were moving all the unspent into the same line items with a very small exception here. Instead of $300 for registration and booth fees. They wanted to split that evenly between office supplies and printing and postage. Are there any questions regarding this one?
I do. I have a question, and it's sort of following on something that Kim mentioned for the prior one. Given that the landscape of the world has changed due to COVID, and this all came in prior, have you heard anything from them about how their projections for the rest of the year may have been impacted? And especially given that a lot of what they're doing is presentations that ordinarily would be in person.
That's a good point, and we haven't heard from them. I haven't at this point reached out to all the programs to see where they're at as far as deliverables. I think we've been reaching out through a variety of other ways. Duan, I just want to ask if there's an idea to reach
for
out.
this particular request, the amount was fairly small. Their budget is fairly small, so we didn't reach out to them. But you'll see the next one, Impact Fund. There has been a lot of back and forth because it's a larger amount, and we need a little bit more information in order to craft a recommendation. And I think that one warrants a little bit more discussion. This one, because it's a very small amount, and it seemed very reasonable to us. So we didn't reach out to see. But I know, generally speaking, a lot of programs that have had in-person meetings have, or like trainings, have moved to remote. So I'm assuming that's what they're doing too, but we haven't confirmed that. We can if you would like.
I don't know if that's necessary, because I agree it's a relatively small amount, and I suppose, just sort of along the theme of what we've been discussing more broadly, my view would be to sort of allow these programs to maintain, the money and see what they can do with it in the interim, especially given that they may see a dip for other reasons related to COVID.
This is Jim. I don't have a problem with either of these two, but I know I have made a request in the past, and I don't know if this just got buried or what, that when we look at these things, that we have one of those boxes on your grid that would be past failures or past efforts to carry forward. I mean, are we dealing with agencies that routinely underspend every year and are always asking for these requests? Or are we dealing with one-time situations or what? Because for me, it makes a difference, even if it's a small amount like 28%. If this agency for the last 5 years, every year for the last 5 years, been asking for 28% or more, that makes a difference as opposed to whether or not it's a one-time occurrence.
So Jim, we haven't forgotten that request. We didn't do it for this particular instance because we think it might be warrant a larger trust fund commission discussion, because we should do it consistently across all our grants. And then at what point do you say that's consistent? That's the problem that we struggle with, because there's some subjectivity with that. Does it mean the last 3 cycles? Does it mean the last 5 cycles? Does it mean ones that habitually ask for an extension and then we approve, or just the ones that blow the deadline? I mean, there's some, like, if we can get parameters from the commission, then we're happy to do that. But without that, it feels a little subjective to us to then check a box and say they have a habitual issue.
I agree.
That feels comfortable too, but we hadn't talked about it, so we didn't feel comfortable as staff kind of making that determination.
I agree. You don't want the bank grants doing one thing and the partnership grants committee doing another. I agree for consistency. I'm just requesting it sometime in the future that we discuss this to set up some general parameters.
Sure, and we can put that on, I could talk to Bonachet and either put it on the August meeting. It's already pretty full right now, so it might need to be bounced to or delayed to November, but we can certainly try. So we haven't forgotten, Jim, but we just didn't know how to do it, so it was consistent.
Okay, all right, thanks.
I have a couple comments on that. One is, I think it's a pretty complex topic, because we know that the request for a carryover is sometimes associated with an inability to hire in the rural areas. And so we might see a repeat of that. Anyway, I think it's important to look at it. And there's a lot of different factors to bring in for weighing why there's maybe repeated carryovers. The other thing is, I feel like it's going to be a few years before we can really get a handle on this, given the climate we're in with recovery and programs really reshaping how they're providing their services. So I think it's a good thing to look at also. I just don't know if it's something we need to kind of punt down the line a little bit.
And just to jump in, I think this is one of the areas that we currently have included in the codification process, kind of through just a simple question, and I think the quality control piece, but I will make additional note of these issues. Did somebody else have a comment?
Well, just a follow-up comment. I agree that these are extraordinary times, and also we've opened the gate to the extent that says that we're going to be really liberal in terms of carry forwards. I would think this would be a good time to collect data on for what reason agencies are doing and what the pattern is, because we have already set the bar that we're going to be liberal in this area.
No, I do agree. I think even if you don't, the commission doesn't make a determination, we could start the fact gathering to do the analysis.
Right. I mean, there's a lot of communication going on now. So I guess you could use that as a way to start gathering information.
And it will become, when we get to this agenda item, when we talk about the new bank grant money, you know, there is a scoring rubric, and one of the scoring factors is organizational compliance, I think, but it's a little bit vague. So we do need to kind of iron it out to some extent for the upcoming round, but we'll save that when we get to that discussion.
Okay.
Should we go to impact fund?
Sure.
Yes.
All right. Okay, so Impact Fund's project seeks to improve access to clean water and other services for communities in unincorporated areas of the San Joaquin Valley. The Access for Low-Income Californians to Clean Water and Services project strives to, 1, identify opportunities and provide subgrants for impact litigation. 2, create a clean water network and convene an annual clean water forum. And 3, create a clean water toolkit for community advocates. As you may remember, back in October 2019, Impact Fund revised their budget to include these, to include subgrants for years 2 and 3 for the impact litigation. And that was approved by the commission in November. So despite the recent budget revision, Impact Fund reported a significant budget deviation for 2019. Their total budget was $130,000, and then their actual expenses reported were $74,081, which was a deviation of 43%. And the deviation is almost solely the result of unspent funds for subgrants. So for 2019, they were approved for $82,745 for subgrants, and they only subgranted out $27,630, which is a deviation of about 67%. So they did note that they are on track with their project goals. Their other project goals being holding a second clean water forum and creating the webinar Clean Water 101. They also, so based on this, for 2019 in their budget revision for subgrants for 2020, they would be looking at $150,058 to redistribute. They will already give out a $25,000 subgrant to Leadership Council for Justice and Accountability, and that is to program their 2020 Clean Water Forum. They partnered with this organization because it is in the Central Valley and has strong ties to community advocates. and they were interested in connecting the community organizations with legal service organizations. And Impact Fund wanted to make sure that the network and the forums would continue after the end of the grant. So that's the reasons they gave for partnering with this organization and providing that subgrant for the 2020 forum. I did also have an additional conversation with Impact Fund because that leaves them a pretty significant amount for subgranting to other organizations, which comes out to about $125,058. And they said that they had been actively recruiting organizations. They have a deadline for their letters of interest that just passed, but they had noted, just based on all the organizations facing similar challenges, they were going to make that a bit of a flexible deadline and allow organizations to apply afterwards. And these are for subgrants that would start in the fall. They did also note that they hoped to get more subgrants through their Clean Water Forum. And during our conversation, because this was while we were in the middle of the pandemic, they noted their intent to apply for a carryover so that they could do an in-person forum. They felt like in discussion with LCJA that would be the most effective way to have a forum. So they wanted to carry, their intent is to carry over funds to have an in-person forum in 2021, which would help them find additional grantees. And what I had followed up with is the amount that grantees can, subgrantees can request. There is no minimum, but the maximum is $50,000. And this is for impact litigation. They also noted that they were expecting some additional, while impact litigation has been slow in 2019, they were expecting it to pick up because of the expiration of the groundwater permits.
Christine, can I add a couple comments on this particular project? So this is a project that when the commission went to review the RFPs that year, really thought that this was a great novel idea. But in particular, a part of why you funded it was because of this litigation aspect. You know, partnering with really grassroots organizations on the ground to potentially do systemic litigation. So it is a little problematic that they're not able to now do the subgrant because that's such a large portion, substantive portion of their project. And, you know, staff, we really struggled with this recommendation. They had this project has been struggling even before the pandemic hit, and now it's struggling more in order to provide the subgrants. With that said, it's still a really great project and has very aspirational goals. You know, they're working in unincorporated areas of California to help bring clean water. So it's a really great project in theory. It's just we do have concerns about whether they're going to be able to carry through with the project.
Christine, Kim Savage had a question in the chat. Do we know why they had a subgrant problem? I don't know if Dwan's comments just answered that.
Oh, yes, and they noted that that impact litigation was slow. They also noted that they needed to remind the community that it their subgrants also included research, not just the actual litigation part, researching for the impact work. And so that I think they were still kind of working out their way to, I guess, let organizations know a little bit more about what they could request a subgrant for.
But 2020 is their last year of the grant, right? Christine,
Yes.
it's a 2018 project. Yeah. So.
Yes.
My question, and hopefully my dog won't start barking as I ask it, is, did they have a subgrant relationship that just didn't go forward, or they just couldn't find subgrantees, which led to the deviation or 67% unused funds. That's what I was trying to understand. I'm also thinking in the back of my mind, I'm thinking CRLA is up and down the valley with a lot of expertise, having done farm worker health and safety issues. Just popped into my mind.
They did have a number of subgrantees, but the amount was relatively small. I believe that the average subgrant, the largest subgrant was about $13,000. I think the average over the first 2 years had been about $7,000 or $8,000. So it's a combination of having smaller subgrants and not a lot of subgrantees.
So they're having trouble finding partners to move this forward in the way they want. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and just to note, that was part of the reason that one of the reasons that they mentioned about having an in-person clean water forum, they felt it was going to be more effective than a virtual forum in getting additional subgrants.
But Kim, also, I think part of the problem is the nature of the project, which is it's not always easy to find, a partner to do impact litigation or that has the case that's coming down. I mean, it's difficult with this type of work. So I think it's inherent in doing, impact litigation.
Well, I agree with you. I think it's a really important project. Just very, very important.
So that's why, I think the staff, we landed on approving their requests. And then, we're midway through 2020, so we'll be able to know if they can spend down at the end of the year. And if they can't at that point, then we recommend that the committee really look into whether we approve a carryover or kind of say no and have them return the funds at that juncture, because it would have been 3 years out. But we did struggle with that recommendation.
And in speaking with them, they felt like they would have a pretty good idea of what that carryover request will look like if they move forward in September at the end of the third quarter.
I'm a little confused. When is it that they want to have this open in-person forum to recruit grantees?
Their idea now, and this was an inquiry, it's not a formal request at this point, was carry over funds to 2021 in order to have an in-person forum.
And do you know when in 2021?
That I don't know, but like the motions through the commission, we are going to ask you guys to consider being more flexible. Currently, through the grant agreement, we have a 6-month spend down period. We're requesting that you make a motion very similar to the commission so that they can request spend down through all of 2021. And if that's something that's available to the grantees, we would definitely get more information of when in 2021 they would be doing certain activities.
Okay, it just seems to me though, it's so we're going to be liberal on the carry forward into 21, and this was a 3-year project that started in 18. And given the way the COVID's going, I mean, I don't see how you can have a big popular open meeting until a little bit later in 21, not the first month or two of 21, depending upon when a vaccine is available. So that means they're going to be recruiting grantees in what, the first quarter of 21 to expend all these grantee monies by the end of 21? Is that what we're looking like as a timeline?
I think that's accurate, Jim, and it might even be later, because I honestly can't imagine having a convening even in Q1 of 2021. So it probably is more likely the best case scenario, Q2 or Q3. So yeah, so this is why the even with on a generous carryover and a year-long carryover, they might not hit the mark So that's why we struggled.
Well, it's a worthy project, might be worth the gamble, but I would think in a more typical situation, that kind of gamble may not be worthwhile.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with Jim. The nature of this project, I mean, it's pretty, it stands out as being rather unique. If it was a more typical substantive area, I think I probably wouldn't look at it the same way.
Well, Kim, do you think if they coordinated more with CRLA, they'd be more likely to find some grantees?
Well, I just know, and probably Dwan does also, that, you know, CRLA is up and down the valley. They are very rooted in their communities. And I mean, I'm not trying to micromanage their project, but I think, I don't know if there's any reason that they haven't contacted CRLA, or maybe they have, but you know, it's certainly within the parameter of what I understand they do, and certainly what Eileen is doing constantly is all the farm worker health and safety stuff. So I don't know. I'm just kind of curious, because I would like to see this succeed. It's super important.
We can suggest to them CCLS and CRLA, but you know, this is a program that is pretty well connected with our QSB community.
I know.
Well known, so I can't imagine that they haven't. But you know, we're happy to suggest it again.
No, I feel exactly the same way. It's just strikes me as sort of a natural organization they would reach out to, but you know, I don't want to get too deep into the weeds on how they run their organization. It just struck me as a really foundation in the community. So yeah, I'd be curious what they say. So Christine, is there more? Are we ready to?
No,
that's the first three, right? So
that's the first three. Did you want to talk about the carryover first and then do all of those together, or would you like to?
Are we ready to vote on these three?
Sure.
Amin, Jim?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just
I
we
mean,
could just
yeah, we're gonna vote.
Yeah.
so we are just talking about the first one at this point. Do we have a motion?
What we need a motion for is approving the budget, the 2019 budget revisions for the 2018 bank grants for the three projects we just looked at: CRLA, Legal Assistance for Seniors, and Impact Fund. And do you want us to bring in these two other points in this motion?
We could do it separately. It's
okay.
I can go back. So if we
Okay.
want to do this one.
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we vote on these three.
That was Jim?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll second. Does it mean?
Amin seconded, yeah.
Okay. We'll do a roll call. Savage?
Yes.
Alsaroff?
Yes.
DeBose? Meeker?
Yes.
And Reines. Okay. 3 yeses, motion passes. All right. We'll go back and okay. So we started this discussion. So just really briefly, grantees need to use their grant funds as indicated in the approved budget. From their proposal materials, they can submit a revision for any material change in the budget, and then, as mentioned, return any unspent funds after the end of the grant period unless they request a carryover and that request is approved. And as you guys know, the requests over 25% require review and approval from the commission. And again, as I mentioned, a number of grantees have inquired about carryovers, but they have not submitted formal ones at this point. But we do anticipate that we will have more of these types of requests, because this is going to be that last year of the 3-year grant, and COVID has played such an impact in their ability to provide services. So the grant agreement that they signed sets a 6-month spend down for any carryover funds. And while this provision is binding for the grantees, the State Bar may waive this and grant a longer spend down period, similar to the IOTA and EAF. So that's what we are recommending for the bank grants, that we have a similar flexibility noted for carryover requests, perhaps being a little bit larger than they had been in the past, and also to allow them to spend down throughout all of 2021 as opposed to 6 months. Do we have any other questions?
Oh, I've got one. I mean, is there any staff reasons why we shouldn't approve this, to be consistent?
No, we strongly encourage you to approve this, to be consistent and to be flexible with programs, given everything that's happening right now.
And Partnership Grant has also approved something similar, so it would be very, it would be the same across the board.
I think it makes a lot of sense. I don't have any questions about it. I guess if we're ready to make the motion, I can make it.
Does staff recommend we just have a motion on number 2, or combining 2 and 3?
I think you can combine 2 and 3.
Okay.
Right, Christine?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. I would move that we approve the State Bar maintaining a flexible approach to carryover requests for 2018 bank grants, with grant periods ending in 2020, in particular by allowing larger amounts to be carried over and by permitting spend down over all of 2021, and that we maintain a flexible approach to budget revision requests.
I'll second that.
All right, and roll call. Savage?
Yes.
Alsaroff?
Yes.
DeBose? Meeker?
Yes.
And Reines. All right, motion passes. Okay, so in the meeting materials were included a letter from One Justice regarding what had happened with their original subgrantee, Inland Empire Latino Lawyers Association, IELA. And in the memo, we discussed this project a little bit more in our recommendations. So in March of this year, IELA informed One Justice that it was not going to be able to carry out its 2020 bank grant deliverables, and that they wanted to bow out of the project. And so One Justice had already been in talks with Inland County Legal Services about being an informal partner, And throughout the process, when they were developing their proposal, they had conversations with ICLS. So once IELA dropped out, they reached back out to ICLS to see if they would be interested in becoming a formal partner with this project. And they agreed. And it really is replacing the subgrant, the subgrantee. The amount for the subgrant is going to remain $135,000 spread across 3 years. The deliverables will remain the same. So it's they've already partnered with ICLS before, and actually I think as noted in the letter and in the memo, ICLS signed on basically for this project, knowing that this committee and the commission might not approve them as an official subgrant. And I heard from one justice that they have been proceeding with work on this grant throughout this period. So for that reason, we do recommend that we allow them to change their partners. But also, I just wanted to note at our last meeting in March, we also looked at One Justice's project because one of their other partners had organizational issues, Legal Aid Society of San Bernardino, and we addressed that in the March meeting and allowed them to revise their budget to allow for more staff time to prepare these organizations for this project and provide more support. Are there any specific questions regarding this proposal?
Yeah, I've got one on the Legal Aid Society of San Bernardino. So it's staying in the project?
No, that was, sorry if that was misleading. No, back in early 2020, when they were experiencing, when we knew about their organizational issues, we reached out to One Justice to see if they were going to, if they wanted to keep LASSB in their proposal, but we also gave them the opportunity to revise their proposal. And they decided that they were going to revise their proposal, eliminating LASSB through the bank grant, but then help them through their other programs through IELTA funding to help with their organizational issues.
Okay, good.
And just to note that this was the second highest funded project through the bank grant. This was one of those projects that we that the committee really liked, and we funded them at $800,000. And they have had to pivot quite a bit to keep this going, and they seem very dedicated.
Amin, any questions or comments?
No, none from me.
Okay. I mean, I think we should move forward, and I can make the motion that we approve One Justice's proposal to replace IELA with Inland County Legal Services as a partnering organization for Inland Empire Community Redevelopment Pro Bono Project.
Sorry. Okay.
Second?
Okay, great. Roll call. Savage?
Yes.
Alsaroff?
Yes.
DeBose? Meeker?
Yes.
And Reines. 3, and the motion passes. Okay. That takes us up to the next agenda item. Would you like me to just start?
Sure.
So our next agenda item is to discuss the distribution and administration of the 31 million in national mortgage settlement funding. So as we noted through some of our emails, this funding is very similar to the homelessness prevention funding. Let me backtrack just a little bit. The governor signed the 2020 budget, and that included AB 83. So this is the official language through AB 83, that $31 million to the Judicial Council for distribution through the State Bar to qualified legal services projects and support centers to provide eviction defense or other tenant defense assistance in landlord-tenant disputes, including pre-eviction and eviction legal services, counseling, advice and consultation, mediation, training, renter education and representation, and legal services to improve habitability, increase affordable housing, ensure receipt of eligible income or benefits to improve housing stability and prevent homelessness. So as we noted, this language is, while it is the National Mortgage Settlement Funds, it's very different from our bank grants, which we're going towards foreclosure prevention and community redevelopment. And this is very specific to homelessness prevention. I think if you had an opportunity to read over the RFP for the 2019 homelessness prevention funds and the memo, it included very similar allocations. The formula allocation is very similar, with 75% going to a formula for these services, and then the 25% going for an RFP. And just to note, this is directly from the language, and it is almost word for word with the homelessness prevention.
So just to know, can you go back to that slide, Christine? Sure. It's based on the IALTA formula, but it's modified. So there's a minimum of 50,000, and then not every IALTA program is going to be eligible for it. So you have to have engaged in this specific work in order to be eligible. So not all 99 programs will receive it. So you know, the programs will actually have to put in an application, and then we verify that they have qualifying activities, and then we base the allocation on those set of programs are eligible. So it's a modified formula.
Do you have any idea what percentage of the programs would be eligible?
Well, we have Greg on the line, who's the staff person that handled the HP grants last year. And I believe it's 70, is it 71, Greg, or am I?
So 86 grants responded initially to our survey, and I'm talking obviously about the homelessness prevention funds, that they would be interested and or they currently provided services. Ultimately, 64 ended up submitting an application, and we approved 61. So I don't know what that percentage is, but it's probably roughly in the 75% range.
And of those that you approved, the 61%, are most of those gauged towards eviction?
Yeah, so thematically, the majority has to do with eviction defense and ultimately under the umbrella of homelessness prevention, yes.
That was 61 programs, right?
Yes, 61 programs were ultimately approved by the commission.
Just the formula, because there's an RFP part that Christine and Greg will go over. This is just the formula piece. The legislation says that 75% of the total funding will go out through formula. But you know, the committee and the commission read it pretty broadly, the legislation last year. So it included not just you know, your typical homelessness prevention work, but they read it to include and Greg, can you remind me the phrasing of services that would bolster homelessness prevention? Like, I think there was a project that had to deal with public benefits, one that had to deal with employment. Is that correct, Greg?
Yeah, so to Dwan's point, I mean, it's fairly broad language, and eviction defense, other tenant defense assistance in landlord-tenant rental disputes, including pre-eviction and eviction legal services, counseling, advice and consultation, ensuring receipt of eligible income or benefits to improve housing stability. So it's a fairly broad umbrella.
And Selena just shared a comment that she can give us a little bit more background on legislative intent, because there was a little bit of confusion last year because it wasn't quite spelled out in the legislation, but we were able to bring in some outside sources with the legislative intent for us to be able to enable us to read it a little bit more broadly than. Go ahead, Selena, if you want to chime in.
Yeah, sure. I think what's helpful to kind of understand with these grants that come from settlement funds, especially here, that is overlaying with what originally was general funds from the state, is what the legislature hopes to do is prevent homelessness, not just eviction defense, because there was a lot of pressure from organizations who just do eviction work to say, let's fund eviction defense. But in talking with legislative staff, they didn't want to just do eviction defense because they know, especially from the Shriver data, from Bonnie and from others, is that once you have a UD, most tenants actually lose their home, and the best you can hope for in many cases is just a soft landing or more time to move out or no impact to credit. And so they really wanted to find out, how to fund ways that prevent people from getting in trouble in the first place with their housing situation. So that's why income maintenance, getting people on benefits, the work that Legal Aid at Work does, especially for removing barriers to employment so that people can have income. That's why that's included under this bigger homelessness prevention umbrella. And I think Jim knows a lot about the data behind all of this from his work with Shriver and other, but that's why you see more than just kind of housing in a small bucket. You see a lot more work that's meant to stabilize families. And that's why you see so much income maintenance work.
But I do have to underscore for this committee that when this point came up last year, because it's not spelled out in the legislation, unfortunately, we wish it would have been, it was a reading. And then obviously, we took into account what Selena said and Helen, who had been in conversation with the legislature at that time, that this was their intent. However, it's just a note for you, it's not spelled out in the legislation. We just went on a limb to trust that was the intent.
And we did add the 50,000 as a minimum because the legislature didn't want tiny pockets of funds going to programs where they couldn't hire and do something. They really wanted to see an expansion of services and new services and encouraging innovation if that was helpful to prevent homelessness. So that's why you see the 50,000 minimum, which you don't see in regular IALTA funding.
This is Jim. I've got a question, and homelessness is far more complicated issue than eviction. And I know the Shriver project presented some good data on what happens with eviction, but it's too bad Herman's not here because I'm sure he knows this stuff far better than I. But I mean, with things like including people that would work on mental health issues, availability of mental health services, the issue of NIMBYism, and putting in halfway houses for the mentally disabled, I mean, would that be included in the scope of this grant?
Well, I think it also there needs to be an intersection with legal services, but there were a couple projects that the constituency that is what you described, Jim, from last time.
Okay.
So I have a question to Selena or whoever else wants to chime in. I really like the broad reading, but what I'm concerned with is whether or not we're going to need to provide some report on the effectiveness of the dollars. And we know, based on Legal Services Corporation and others, they like numbers. Mm-hmm. They like these very objective numbers about how many people were prevented from losing their homes. And, so although I really like the broad reading because it's all real world stuff, in terms of housing stability and housing creation, as Jim just referred to. I obviously want us to get more of this money, but want to know if we really need to have a report back with some, concrete numbers.
Yeah, that's a really good question, Kim. And we've already, with the last homelessness prevention funding, we have we're collecting data. So there are evaluations that the current grantees are expected to complete. And we plan on, we've been in conversations with both Selena and Bonnie that to continue it with this funding, because we like to aggregate both sets of funding so that we can report back to the legislature.
So when you get to something like what Jim has proposed, which is of course near and dear to my heart because that's what I work on, the crossover of land use and that whole dynamic of getting housing developed, it's really hard to quantify what the positive impact is, because the money is far spent by the time you actually get that housing development approval process from local government. So
from last time, Kim, the vast majority were still more the would fit under the traditional and not the broad interpretation. I mean, I don't know off the top of my head, maybe Greg might, how many programs were, the more, I don't know, not the direct kind of eviction defense and, but the other support services, I guess you could say, legal services. I feel like that was the minority, not the majority. Yeah. I think we should have good numbers. However, the first set of evaluations is not due yet. So once they come through, we can aggregate the data and see where we're at.
Well, it raises sort of what Chris Schreiber was talking about, is just, not wanting to, well, we're going to lead into that discussion, but just, wanting to do more than kind of some of the basic Band-Aid work.
Exactly.
And the possibility of that.
Yeah. And Greg, Selena, I don't know if you had things to add, but that.
Yeah, just one real thing, quick thought where Kim had mentioned, we would love to see this funding continue in the future. So this one source of funding is one time, but I don't think that precludes us from asking for this funding from general funds, not this year, but several years from now, because that's what LAC was doing prior to COVID, is we were talking to the legislature about making the 20 million ongoing rather than one-time funds. And when we were sharing kind of early data, which mostly was narratives, we were saying, here's what Legal Aid at Work is doing, here's what so-and-so program is doing, because we gathered client stories before going to legislature. They seem very supportive, and they totally get that homelessness prevention happens before the eviction takes place, and it encompasses a whole lot more work. So we were telling a story and drawing out the picture while we were still waiting for the data to come in. So I actually really think that once the COVID crisis is over, and once we have a better financial picture in the state of California, we can take all of this really amazing data, stories, client impact back to the legislature and see if we can get some of it ongoing to support these programs. So I think
that's great.
Well, and I think it's also framing the issue for them, that it's like a holistic problem and not just tackling, like you said, Kim, some of the Band-Aid. But if we tackle it holistically, then maybe have longer lasting effects. So we are able to take that data, maybe quantify it, and hopefully, Jim, you can help us once the data comes through. Then we can start to craft this, the narrative.
Well, on the issue of data, one of the things I think would be helpful is in their proposal, if they could actually specifically say what kind of data they're going to be gathering. For example, on just simple evictions, in the past, you guys didn't collect household data. But for one of these projects, I would think household data would be important. So you don't just say we won 20 eviction cases. You sit there and say, well, we won 20 eviction cases, but the households of these 20 eviction cases represented 300 people across 10 different races or ethnic categories. I mean, if they could be thinking about that in the application process so that we know ahead of time that they're thinking about what data they're going to collect, we're going to get much better data than in the end when they say, oh, the project is ending, now we got to file an evaluation report. Now we got to think about what data can we gather.
Well, Jim, I would take it one step further. If you could help us look at, what the reporting requirements are for existing. And like I said, we want to aggregate it, but if there's room to tweak, then we can certainly try to tweak to make it across the board. Because what we don't want is some programs are reporting like this and then some programs aren't. We're not going to be able to aggregate it. And that's, I think, the more important we need to consistently collect across the board so we can aggregate the data. And report out.
I think that's a terrific idea, because we know that there are multiple households in many dwelling units. And not only that, if we can even get ages, you know, seniors, children. I mean, I don't want to put, you know, it's a little bit of a burden on the programs, but on the other hand, they know that this data helps future funding, and they're gathering a lot of that information anyway. But I totally agree on evictions. You really want numbers of people impacted.
Well, and to add to that, it's one thing to collect that on when you're intaking a case and you're handling it. It's almost impossible after the fact.
Yeah.
When the case is closed, to go back and get it. That becomes extraordinarily expensive.
Yeah.
And so that's why I'm suggesting that the data collection issues be addressed up front in the proposal, not in the back end in the evaluation.
No, we agree with you. Where we have struggle is, you know, we try to do it in-house, but we could benefit from your expertise, Jim, in designing it.
Sure. Well, and not just me too. I mean, Herman knows a lot about this stuff too. He deals in the same areas.
Yeah. And also you, Kim, because you've done housing work. So, you know, because last time we had to, we were trying to release the funds pretty quickly. We did the best we could, but I think we have a little bit more time now. And we have a template to work off of to improve. Again, we don't want to change it too dramatically because, you know, we want to be able to aggregate the data, but if there are areas that are easy to improve, then I think we can certainly do that. And perhaps even then have a webinar with the grantees to kind of explain to them the changes and why we're doing it and give them a lot of technical assistance.
Christine, it's back at you.
Okay. So we talked about formula, and then the other piece is the 25% that would go towards an RFP, and I think that's, you know, a lot of what we've been speaking about as well. What that RFP, what's going to be in that RFP, and the sort of data that we would be collecting. But just to note that it's we're looking at 25%, and one of the differences between this and the 2019 homelessness prevention funds is there is no specified date for when it has to be spent down yet. So the 2019 homelessness prevention funds have to be spent down by
June 30, 2021.
There's no specified date for spend down, but I think there is a language about like wanting to release it. I can't remember the phrasing in the legislation, like quickly. Do you guys?
As soon as practicable.
At your.
It is practical.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what would be helpful on the 25% that's allocated through competitive grant process is if we had some feedback from Bonnie on what she thinks are the most productive findings that have been made through the Shriver project. I mean, they've spent a lot of money on the housing issue, and they've had a lot of projects, some of which have been fairly successful, some of which maybe not as successful. But it seems to me, as at least as a commission member, when I'm prioritizing grants, if we got a grant that's proposing to do something that Shriver has found very effective elsewhere, like say the settlement process in San Bernardino, or not San Bernardino, Santa Barbara, that somebody's trying to do that in Kern Valley, or somebody's trying to do that somewhere else, I'd be far more favorable to support that as opposed to somebody's coming up with something that maybe has never been tested before or has been tested before and not found to be successful in other areas. That would be helpful to me. And it would get more money and bang out of the Shriver project.
Sure. That's a good point, Jim. And Selena says she has a comment if.
Yeah, so Bonnie is finalizing one of the mini evaluations for Shriver that's due to the legislature, and she's working on a series of one-pagers. And she gave me a draft of them last week. So I'm sure State Bar staff, if you wanted to ask Bonnie for the draft one-pagers. Jim, you may have seen them as well, but there's some really great pull-out infographics specific to housing. I'll just read one little fact here. Like, a year later, a telephone survey found that 71% of Shriver tenants had moved into a new rental unit versus 43% of self-represented litigants who were presumably still couch surfing or, did not have a permanent home. And there were fewer judgments against tenants, like a significant difference of fewer judgments against tenants in Shriver cases. So because Shriver had built in so many evaluation pieces to the actual components of how the programs were designed, we have such amazing data, and we know what works and we know what doesn't work from Shriver.
Well, see, that was one of the important findings that I thought out of the Shriver project was not so much they always won and kept people in their housing. In fact, they usually lost because people hadn't been paying the money, but they saved their credit record. They got them into alternative housing. They kept them in housing longer. All of those things, which if you don't ask the programs ahead of time to collect that data, they're not going to be able to go back later and get that data. So I think it's important to have that part, especially in the competitive grant process, where I think we can be a little bit more insertive in terms of what kind of data to collect to show the effectiveness.
Yeah. Shriver also shows that a Shriver represented tenant saves on average over $2,000 in fees and other costs, including attorney's fees to the landlord side. So when you're having more settlements and fewer trials and the tenant ultimately doesn't prevail, they don't have to pay all the attorney's fees if they had a settlement instead. So they, for a low-income household, saving $2,000, that saves them from having future wage garnishment orders against them. So there's some really great findings that you could build in if you want to have that data from the 25%.
Yeah. And the one other thing that I'd add, Jim, is some tangentially related to what you brought up. For both the homelessness prevention funding as well as AB 83, the language specifically does call out in awarding these grants, and this is for the competitive grant, preference shall be given to qualified legal aid agencies that serve rural or underserved communities and that serve clients regardless of immigration or citizenship status. So that gives a little bit of direction for the committee to sort of steer the dollars, if that's the appropriate word.
Of course, as we all know, defining what is rural and what is not always becomes a thorny question.
And believe me, we ran into that issue as well for the HB. So in a sense, and I think this is partly what Christina and Duan are referring to, is that I think we can use what we did for the HP funding to inform what we plan to do for this $31 million to sort of learn from the process that we undertook to distribute the $20 million in homelessness prevention funds.
Well, is there any way to put in the request for proposals on this 25%, some of these extra variables that we'd like them to collect, such as where did they end up in housing? Did they save the attorney's fees? Did they save their credit rating? Those kinds of things?
Yeah, well, we can build it out in our grantees know that they have to submit evaluation with, our discretionary grants, so we can build it into our evaluation. So that's where we kind of, like the commission to help us, the committee to help us fine tune our existing reporting requirements.
Okay, and it'd be good to specifically reference the findings in the Shriver project so they know that we're not pulling this stuff out of the air.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I should move to the timeline. Does that
Selena has another comment.
Sorry.
Oh, just really quickly, when we were talking about this funding with the Department of Finance, Duan and I talked a lot with Department of Finance back in March about how to carve out funds for homelessness prevention. All of these decisions were made with COVID already as a backdrop. And so I think that this committee, when you ultimately make your decisions on the 25 percentile of RFPs, I think you can look at what we know about COVID and how that's impacted homelessness throughout the state. And there could be projects that are specific responses to COVID and the eviction, wave of evictions that will happen and how people are preparing for that. So, definitely rural was a big issue with the assembly, and making sure that immigrants are undocumented was a huge commitment from the Senate. But we also, you are able to look at the impact of COVID too.
So I think this is just a tentative deadline.
Christine, can you talk a little bit about the how what we're suggesting for this administration to be done by the HP committee and not Bake Grant?
Yes. Yeah, sorry. So as I mentioned in my email, what we were hoping to do is that some volunteers from this committee would be willing to join the current homelessness prevention committee, where this money will be distributed from. Specifically, we would like volunteers to be on both committees. We still need to maintain a bank grant committee. As you guys know, we have some remaining funds that need to be distributed, and we'll also have ongoing work. But we recognize that this is a great opportunity, and you guys have a lot of experience with all of the parts of the putting together the discretionary grants, specifically what we've just been talking about with the RFP and the evaluation pieces. So when we look at the timeline, that is something to consider, but we are looking for, I don't think we necessarily have a minimum. We have 3 people here today to hopefully volunteer. Was there an additional piece that you wanted to mention, Dwan?
No, that's it. You know, Kim and Chris and I spoke last week, and we thought that, you know, they're technically, you know, a big grant money, but substantively, because it's pretty much identical to HP funds, that it made more sense for it to live with the HP committee because they have the substantive expertise. However, you know, the big grant committee has so much expertise in like reviewing big applications and crafting an RFP and fine tuning things that we thought it made sense to kind of collapse the members because the HP committee is very small and we need about 8 people to round out that committee. And we only have 4 right now. So if there are members of this committee that would like to join, we really need an additional 4 over there. Oh, Kim, you're on mute.
I already said that I would work on that, and I hope other people will also. I think it's you know, with the timing of wanting to get this money out quickly, I think would be helpful if people joined in as much as they could.
So Jim and Amin, if you have the bandwidth, we could use your help.
Yeah, sure, sign me up.
I'd be happy to join as well.
Thank you so much, Amin. Okay,
And
Christine, you
you
want to
can-
go through the timeline then?
Yes. So, you know, right now, until early August, we will be working on that request for a proposal. And part of the reason that I sent that late last week to you guys is, as we have been discussing, we're going to use that homelessness prevention proposal as our starting point, which is nice that we're not starting completely from scratch. But this will be a very condensed timeline because we would need to finalize that RFP to present to the commission at its next commission meeting, which is August 14th.
Oh, and just to back up, we're hoping to just have projects launched January 2021. So that's, you know, it's the last HP grants. We did a mid-cycle distribution, and it's very hard for programs as well as for us. So we'd like to get it back on a calendar. So January 2021, and we think it will be consistent with the legislation in terms of trying to get it out as quickly as, you know, practical. That's probably the earliest we could get it out while doing kind of a thoughtful review process.
Yeah, and that's the date that we were working back from, which is how we have some of these dates listed here. We also will be, Greg will be trying to schedule the next Homelessness Prevention Committee meeting. So that would be the committee meeting that the volunteers will be joining, I believe, and that will be early August. By that point, we had hoped that we would have a pretty finalized RFP just with a working group that we that staff will be working with of committee members to go back and forth so that we're getting work done between now and that next HP committee meeting, so that we can have a good discussion at that point and approve to a recommendation to then go to the commission. And then we're looking at late August, early September to release the applications in Smart Simple. And we're working on the back end to get all of that infrastructure in place in Smart Simple for these funds. And then I might let Dawn speak a little bit more about this, but there was discussion about a homelessness prevention webinar, providing the grantees, the interested grantees, more information about what, I guess, the need and what we are looking for. It sounds like, since we're already discussing a lot about the data that we want them to include in the proposals and how we want to aggregate this data and present, this would potentially be a good opportunity to expand on that. We're looking at this time frame, you know, maybe not right before the application is released, but sometime during that time when they're working on the application, to get them thinking and get us some really good applications to review.
Yeah, we're hoping to, I mean, and this came out of two separate conversations that we had with both Kim and Chris, and then separately with Bonnie and Selena, and that maybe we should have some type of, you know, virtual convening to kind of high level lessons learned from the last round. Maybe bring in some, Chris had a suggestion of bringing in some experts in housing to kind of get the wheels turning for programs to see, you know, what they can do to provide kind of a forum to brainstorm so that we could provide technical assistance to improve project proposals. And we did that for the bank grants, and that worked fairly well in terms of, you know, having a continuous dialogue between the commission and the grantees to kind of, you know, help craft project proposals.
And then we don't have specific dates listed here yet, but then the applications coming back in early October, and then we would start our review. The committee, similar to the bank grant, this is a little bit different than how the 2019 HP review process went, but we feel like the bank grant committee's process for reviewing the applications works really well, with working groups reviewing all the applications and then coming together to discuss them. So that's what we would like to do, and why we need more committee members for the HP committee, so that we can do that effectively and not overly burden the members of the committee, so that we would be reviewing the applications in October, and then we need to set up, it's not a standing meeting right now, so we would need to set up a homelessness prevention committee meeting. And then, you know, I think I have listed here the commission meeting, which is currently scheduled for November 13th. I think that's something that we could shoot for, but recognize we might have to call an additional meeting, but we're not.
Yeah, this is a really ambitious timeline, and so you know, I don't know whether it's practical for us to bring it to the last commission meeting of the year, so the 13th. What we may need to do is call an ad hoc committee meeting for just approving the recommendation for awardees. I don't know if we're going to make that November 13th. So it might be a late November, early December meeting. But we'll strive for the 13th and then see what happens. We might need to modify this.
Christine, Debbie Manning has her hand raised.
Oh, yes.
Hi, Christine. I like the idea of the homelessness prevention webinar. And I think that, and I know I'll leave this to maybe Selena has a better idea on this, is opening it up also to people in the legislature, that since this is legislative money, my understanding, to
Yes.
have them be a part of this to see what's sort of going on out there. Sometimes they're a little bit separated for some of that, but that might be a good opportunity for them to see how much we're doing. So
Yeah, and that's exactly, Chris had that suggestion as well. So yes, that we would
okay,
like to involve, have them part of the conversation.
perfect. All right, thank you.
Any other comments?
Oh, and just a quickly note, there's a language in the legislation that says that the approval of these grants is done by Legal Services Trust Fund Commission. So I did check with Donna to see at which point the board needs to come in and approve. And she said because it's built into the legislation that we don't need to have official board approval. However, the board has been kept up to date of the $31 million, and we would like to involve Debbie and Chris, you know, as part of the planning, and you have them participate in all our kind of meetings and the development of the RFP.
Oh, that sounds good. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments on the timeline?
So just to kind of summarize, the next thing that Amin and Jim and I will be looking for is scheduling a meeting that'll come from Greg, I guess.
Yes, that'll come from Greg. Greg is the staff coordinator for the HP committee meeting. But Christine will also be involved with providing, I mean, they're probably going to be co-coordinating it together.
Okay.
Greg is the official the staff
Okay.
coordinator,
Okay.
and Christine will be heavily involved.
Okay, thank you.
And in the meantime, we're hoping, if it's okay, you know, we'll take a crack at revising the RFP and coming up with like the decision-making points. But we'd like to reach out to some committee members, you know, to bounce off some ideas on which direction the committee would like to go on, so that when we get to the August meeting, we have, you know, pretty much everything fleshed out.
Okay, sounds good.
And that, based on that, do we have members currently available that are interested in being on the working group specifically for the RFP?
That's fine with me. Yeah, I'm happy to look at that.
Thank you, Kim. And this is a staff a staff-led working group. So we would not be subject to Bagley-Keene, but we would be circulating products for you and you know, hopping on a couple calls.
Okay, sure.
And this would
I'll
be, Jim?
I'll participate too.
Great. And Jim, we really need your help, because the last HP funding, there was a scoring rubric, and that's the first time we've done a scoring rubric for discretionary grants in this office. And we learned a lot from it that we could use your expertise in terms of like how to weigh things and what to weigh, and because we had some challenges the last round.
Sure. And it's been my experience when you have scoring rubrics, the only good ones are about 10 iterations through. So it takes a while.
Okay. All right, great. So yes, because it's staff led, we'll be reaching out to both of you in the next couple weeks. All right. That is it for the 31 million, unless anybody else has any final comments or questions. Okay. So the next one is going to be a little quick. I wanted to provide a bank grant evaluation update. This work has been a little delayed with a number of things going on. It's moving along, but I had hoped that it would be ready for this committee meeting, but we need a little bit more time. So this is a short update, but we are working and continue working on the bank grant evaluation that we discussed back at the last meeting. That's going to be looking at what has been accomplished with the bank grant funds from 2016 through our most recent annual evaluation reportings 2019.
And we're hoping to have this report ready to present to you, and that at some point during this year to present it to the commission as well as the board of trustees, because we have allocated a lot of those fundings and we have a lot of data to share. So we'll have to work with Debbie and Chris and Donna and see at what kind of board meeting there's a little bit of time for us to do a short presentation.
And I will turn it back to you, Kim. That's all of my updates.
Okay, does anyone have, I have one thing I want to raise, but does anyone else have anything they want to raise? Jim, Amin?
No.
Nothing from me now.
Okay, so the one thing I just wanted to ask about was the more liberal carryover beyond the 6 months, and in what way that will be communicated to programs who I guess at this point think they maybe have 6 months.
We've been getting a lot of questions, so I think you know this recommendation will go to the full trust fund commission,
Right.
and I think after the trust fund commission votes on it and hopefully approves, then we'll send out an email communication to the grantees to let them know.
Okay, so after that August meeting.
Yeah, after the August meeting.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, quickly. Go ahead, Christine.
Oh, the programs that have reached out are aware that we were going to discuss this issue. So they know that what we were recommending and to expect some more communication afterwards.
Okay, all right.
And also I have just been giving them a heads up about what preliminarily what we're looking for in the carryover request, that we do want some specific information. It's not because we have done this in the past, but we are expecting a lot of requests, and to give them this flexibility, we're expecting some detailed information in return.
Okay, okay. I don't have anything else. Does anybody else? Staff?
Well, I got one caveat on that. One is that my understanding is Helen was advising these programs all the way back since last January that this 2020 budget was out of the ordinary and that it was a big blip and that programs shouldn't be counting on that. And that was before, well, I don't know, you could argue with the epidemiologists whether or not COVID was rampant here in January or not. But at least as far as the administration was concerned, it was not. So that these programs have had lots of heads up that that the money that they got in 2020 was not going to be likely to be forthcoming in future years. And second, that is my understanding that most of them understood that in our earlier meetings this summer that we were all supportive of this carryover. I mean, aren't they all familiar with that at this point?
Well, we spoke about it in the context of IOLTA, but there wasn't a motion that was passed for all funding. That's why each committee is determining whether that's, you know, and then we're going to bring the recommendation to the commission. But I do think that programs know that the commission's inclination is to be flexible. So I don't think they're expecting you not to approve, or, you know, the larger commission to not approve it.
And what about, have you gotten any feedback on this issue of not holding back 25%? Option B, if I remember correctly, the four forced choice rank options of holding back nothing versus holding back 12 versus holding back 25 versus holding back 33.
So, as you know, the Board of Trustees just voted on Friday, and I sent out an email right after that meeting to let everybody know what the 2020 distribution, that we're maintaining it, and then the drop. I mean, more importantly, I think they needed to know the drop for 2021 so they could start planning, and it was a 57% reduction. But I haven't actually received any emails yet.
I was just wondering, because based on your data, the most popular option was to hold back, what was it, 12%? 15%, I forget the exact number. Option B.
I I haven't received feedback, but we've been communicating with programs at every juncture. After each commission meeting, we've been saying this was a straw poll. After the commission made the recommendation, we sent out. Then after the board of trustees actually voted on it, we've been sent out, and we haven't received any. So I mean, programs were aware that we were moving towards a no change, and that was the recommendation coming from the board of trustees. And we haven't received any negative feedback, if that's what you're asking.
Okay, that's what I was asking. Thanks.
I mean, we did receive, I shouldn't say that. There were a couple programs from last Friday's email that were surprised at the drop in 2021, that it was a reduction of 57%. I mean, we've been saying, and I think Selena's been a good job messaging also through LAC. So they've been hearing it, in several different forums and junctures, but I think to see the number and then to see it like explicitly say it's a 57% drop is hard, for programs. It's a large amount. I mean, it's a big drop. So
yeah.
But we did let them know again that the $31 million that's coming through for the HP funds. Yeah. So Selena's saying that she's surprised, but this happens every year. It's just once programs see it in writing, they're always surprised by the increase in the drop. Like I said, it's it becomes more real. I would say the vast majority of programs are aware and follow up, but it's hard for them.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of like the Casablanca line, right? I'm shocked there's gambling taking place.
Other items to discuss? Okay.
Great.
I move to adjourn. It's 11:43.
All right.
Good. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay, thanks.
So long.
Bye.
Take care.
Rest of your week.